Good evening, everyone, and I would like to welcome you and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, June the 15th. Is there any pecuniary interest? Since we last met, we all bore witness to the unthinkable crime and attack on an innocent family in London. And while this did happen in London, the aftermath of it all ripples down to not only surrounding communities, but as we watched, it rippled through the province and yes, even the country. We all became connected because of this. I'm sure, like me, you are still trying to process it all. Far too many times we have witnessed from afar crimes of this nature in other countries, in other communities. However, I would hope that we are not so naive as to think that racial prejudice does not exist here. After all, we have seen signs and we've heard stories of troubling signs. However, a brutal targeted attack on a family just out for an evening stroll really does leave me wondering what is going on. As leaders, we are looked to for continuity and comfort. It is hard to offer that during times when we ourselves are hurting, burdened, and troubled. But to our community, I offer this. We must acknowledge what has happened, and we must be part of a better future. Right here in my office, I have a sign that reads, "Do better." We must be part of a present and the future where we do better. We must call out hate when we see it. We cannot be idle bystanders any longer. When we hear inappropriate language referring to a culture, when a joke is shared that really shouldn't be, speak up. If we don't, how can we be part of facilitating change? Hatred grows, and it's easy when we don't stop that growth. Ignorance leads to fear, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate. So let's just stop the cycle at ignorance. Love will always prevail, and we must lead with love. After what we can only be described as an incredibly emotionally charged week, I hope that this week marks the start of healing and recovery for not only a grieving and broken family and community, but for a city, a region, province, and the country as a whole. Maybe now we have realized we must look inward to put action behind the words of tolerance and acceptance and inclusivity. We often look at past leaders and influences for inspiration at a time like this. I was empowered when I found this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. "Hatred paralyzes life, love releases it. Hatred confuses life, love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life, love illuminates it." Kirk and I participated in the multi-faith walk that was organized on Friday night. And though we were brought together by darkness, there was a lot of love in that crowd. I will always believe that love will prevail. On another front, today is Men's Mental Health Awareness Day. This annual event aims to normalize conversations about mental health issues and reduce the stigma that often prevents men from seeking help. As the mother of five, if you count my husband, adult men, one who suffers and struggles daily with his mental health, I am only too aware of the importance of the conversations that families, friends must have. I often speak about the effects of the pandemic on women. However, recently, new research has revealed that more than half of Canadian men are experiencing poor well-being because of the pandemic. The fear is out there that living through this pandemic may have changed their mental health forever. Signs and symptoms of mental health conditions may present themselves differently in men. Familiarize yourself with these symptoms. Find local supports for your loved ones and yourself. The CMHA has many of these supports in our community, and I encourage you to reach out for those supports. We do have a couple of delegations, but before we start those, I just wanted to poll council When we were in Zoom meetings, early on in the pandemic, I was calling the vote as all opposed, and then I switched to all in favor. I would like to go back to the all opposed format. It's much easier to see the hands in the air. So if council is agreeable, I will call the vote as all opposed. I'll just look for a nod of the head of that. Okay, thank you. Okay. So we do have a couple of delegations this evening. The first one is from Aqua, and it looks like Jackie and Renee are both here, or Renee and Jackie. And it's great to see you both, although Renee doesn't have her camera on, so I can't see her. She must be just turning it on. There she is. And Jackie looks like she's somewhere bright because the sun is streaming in, but that's great. It was a beautiful day. It just seems like we just had you here with the 2020 report, but it's great to see you this evening. And Renee, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll start presenting my screen. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and municipal staff. Bear with me for a second. Oh, do I not have the ability to share? I don't think I have the ability.
Try it, Renee, should work.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, so yes, it does seem like I was just here not long ago. So tonight I'm going to be presenting the first quarter of the Lucan and Granton 2021 operations report. These reports are just a quarterly update of the system. It's an overview of the system operation and compliance and things that are going on within the systems. So we'll start off with the Granton RBC. For the first quarter, there were lower flows in 2021. That's for January, February, and March. This is a result of the slow melt and no heavy rains as there have been in the previous years. So we're well below what we typically would be for the first quarter of the year. One of the issues that we did have was a non-compliance that was related to suspended solids. This seems to be a problem related to the chemicals and they're not flow paced. So it goes from one extreme to the next. Low flows or high flows, both of those can create havoc for a small system such as Granton. This was reported to the MECP as required. During daily operations, one of the operators noticed that the media discs on the RBC were damaged. So these were ordered immediately and scheduled for replacement in April. We had also scheduled in advance an inspection of the RBC by an outside contractor so we could ensure that the system was working properly. It was found that bearings needed to be replaced, which was completed on March 15th. This was, it was required to be done by this contractor. Special equipment was required to do this. There was one alarm in February that was related to low temperature within the RBC building. This was a result of a tripped breaker within the system. And as you can see, there are the flows for the past 4 years, and January to March for this year was quite a bit lower than typical. And then for the Lucan sewage treatment plant, we also had lower flows than normal for the first quarter. It shows that they're up from previous years, but that will catch up as we get through the season, and it will show that we are probably going to be lower for the whole year. And again, this is as a result of slow snow melt and no heavy rains. We had to send an effluent pump away to be rebuilt, and we had 3 alarms: a sanitary pump failure that was related to a power blip. We had a grit room alarm. Sometimes there's, when we get a heavy rags coming in, it glitches out the system and causes an alarm. And then we also had a hydro outage on February 12th. The effluent quality for January exceeded the objectives. and in March. It exceeded the objectives, but not the compliance limits. And that is our goal, to strive to always meet compliance. Periodically, if we don't meet the objectives, that's acceptable as long as there's just cause for that. We have had issues with foam recently that we're working on, and part of that is also related to the filter pump that was sent away for repairs. And other than that, we haven't had an MECP inspection since 2016, and that's all I have to report for Grant and Lucan.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Renee. You answered my question about the lower flows. I had that jumped right out at me. But does council have any questions for Renee when she's here? Councillor Westman.
I have a, oh.
Hi, Renee. Just curious about fats, oils, and grease. That's kind of my pet project there, but we did have a bit of issues in Granton with fats, oils, and grease. I'm just wondering if there was any change in that.
Over the last couple months, I've noticed that there is not as much grease buildup. Typically on the media, it would show as a gray color when there is a grease buildup, and we haven't seen that recently, but it's hit and miss. It can be at any time and then go away. So it's right now, it does seem fine.
Okay, good. Councillor Reagan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Renee, I was just wondering, when you with the alarms, what exactly is the response time to those?
Typically within an hour, somebody responds, and depending on what the alarm is, the operator knows what the alarm is immediately, so they can judge what the requirements are. For example, when we have a power failure, we know that some of the pumps fail and need to be reset. Maybe the chemical pumps need to be checked to ensure that they're running. The blowers may need to be reset. So they do typically try to get in quickly. They all live pretty close to Lucan and Granton, so it doesn't take that long.
All right. No, thank you very much. I was just curious. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Manders. But you're muted.
Just wondering, when it comes to replacing a pump or repairing a pump, is that, do you do the costs and review that with Jeff Little, or is that something that is just the age of the pump makes sense to replace it or repair it or replace it? Or just kind of curious of how the steps there are, if it's reviewed with Jeff, or that's just under your control.
Well, typically we have an annual maintenance, capital maintenance plan where I suggest maintenance that needs to be done. And typically I would prefer to do a pump rebuild as opposed to, I'd rather be proactive than reactive, basically. And in this situation, though, it was reactive. And yes, I always review everything with Jeff. Depending on the cost, I may be required to get 3 quotes, but it always goes through Jeff.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was just kind of curious exactly because of the age of the pump and replacing it or continuing to repair it or whatever. No, very good, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for our friends at Aqua? Okay, well, seeing nothing, I would just ask before we say goodbye for a motion to accept Renee's report for information. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. And all opposed? And that's carried. Any last words, Renee or Jackie? It's great to see you.
Well, I look forward to meeting you all in person in the near future.
I know.
Sooner than later. I've got a one water program I'm itching to present to the grade 8 students. And so hopefully we can get out there sooner than later and start spreading the word.
Exactly. I mean, I think it shouldn't be lost on any of us that yes, we actually haven't met you in person, Renee, as much as we feel like we know you now. But no, we certainly appreciate all the support. It's a great working relationship and partnership that we have with Aqua, and I think we all agree we'll look forward to seeing each other in person.
Thank you very much. You have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay, Moving on, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And joining us is our consultant for the County of Middlesex, Jennifer Kirkham. And she is going to present to us the final document that everybody has been working on for just over a year now. So whenever you are ready, Jennifer.
Hi, good evening. I'm just going to share my screen for you. So I think I came to talk to you a while ago about the Middlesex Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, and we now have a 5-year plan, and you've got a copy of the plan on your agenda. So I'm just going to give you some brief highlights from it. So just a reminder that it is a 5-year plan. So it's going to be running from 2021 through to 2026. You'll see over here on the right-hand side of the screen, that's the Provincial Framework around community safety and wellbeing. So really, with the focus being broader than what we traditionally think of when we think about community safety, which is that red circle, which is typically sort of crime, police, emergency services. The plan is a shared plan for all of Middlesex County, so including the County of Middlesex and all the local municipal partners. As I said, you'll see a focus, a very broad focus in terms of the areas of priority that have been identified for the 5 years, and really looking at how do we leverage community resources and existing initiatives, knowing that there are no dollars attached from the province in terms of implementing the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And the plan is due July 1st, which is why it's in front of you today for your discussion and approval. So as part of the planning process, there was an advisory committee that really worked to review all of the information and data that was collected and identify the priority areas, goals, and objectives that you see before you in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So this just gives you a listing of all of the different agencies. So it's a really broad cross-section of different sectors that were involved in actually taking a look at developing the plan. Just a reminder about the process. So we went through 4 different phases as we were developing the plan. So if you look, sort of phase 1 was the beginning, sort of bringing everyone on board and talking a little bit about community safety and well-being. In phase 2, we developed a data package. So we've got about a 100-page document of data about the county as a whole, as well as local municipalities across all of the different elements that comprise community safety and well-being, as well as part of the data and asset mapping. We did an inventory of existing planning tables to look at what they were focusing on and some of the strategies and initiatives that were being undertaken already across the communities in the county. Phase 3 was then an opportunity to go out and gather perceptions about community safety and well-being. So you see we did a community partner survey there where we had 50 different community organizations respond to that survey. They represented 20 different sectors. The other big piece was a general public survey where we had 276 responses. That is a confidence interval of 5.89, which means if 80% agreed with something, the range would be 5.89% below or above the 80%. So fairly good in terms of the confidence interval. I know sometimes people think you need to get an awful lot of responses for it to be generalizable to the community, but we've got a pretty good response rate. 7.1% of the responses did come from Lucan Biddulph residents. And then the last piece of the process was what I call sense making and plan development. So that's where the advisory committee took a look at the data that was collected. They looked at the responses we got to the community partner survey, also the general public survey, and identified priority areas for the first community safety and wellbeing plan. So that's what you'll see here is we've got sort of 4 broad categories or priority areas that you'll see in the community safety and wellbeing plan, with a number of sort of different sort of subsets underneath each of those big areas. I'm going to walk you through those a little more closely in a minute. So for each of the priority areas you'll see in the plan, we have identified goals and objectives for each of them. The next piece of work will be to identify outcomes and performance measures. So 5 years from now, how will you know if you've made a difference in each of those priority areas? So the first big area is health. You'll see 3 areas of focus underneath health. So we've got physical health, mental health, and substance use and addiction. So all I've put up on the screen for you today are the goals. So those are the broad areas that will be focused on in each of those 3 areas under health. If you look in the community safety and wellbeing plan, you will also see objectives for each of those goals. So because they're so broad, so if we take a look at the first one, which is to increase equitable access to culturally sensitive and safe care, very broad. So in your plan, you'll see the objectives, which are the pieces that will be specifically focused on over the course of the next 5 years to increase equitable access. In housing and homelessness, which is the second broad area in the plan, you'll see a couple of goals there. One focusing specifically on housing, the other one focusing on homelessness, so making sure we're covering off both of those areas. Third area, quality of life. So under quality of life, we've got 3 areas of focus: employment, education, and skills development, food security, and transportation. And again, you'll see the different goals that will be focused on over the course of the next 5 years in each of those areas. And then the final area focus is public safety. So there you'll see 2 goals, again, very broad, to increase public safety. And the second one is to increase the capacity of police officers to respond to public safety issues. So it gives you a sense sort of on a broad level around what you see in the community safety and wellbeing plan and what the focus will be over the next 5 years. So we talked a lot about how do you move it forward now that you've got a plan, which is always great to have. You want to make sure that you're going to implement it going forward, and worked with the project steering committee, which are the CAOs from all of the municipalities, to talk a bit about what that could look like. So in order to have sort of an overall Middlesex approach, as well as to make sure that we're seeing integration across those 5 priority areas, we decided that there would be a broad committee, so a Middlesex Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, which would be the overall committee to guide and oversee the work that's being done in each of those 5 priority areas, to make sure there's some integration and there's some oversight in terms of moving forward. As well, they would be responsible for sort of monitoring the performance measures to make sure you're on track to meeting the outcomes as well. Then underneath that, we would have some subcommittees for each of the priority areas. So for each of those 5 areas I talked about, there would be a subcommittee where we would leverage existing planning tables versus creating new tables where possible. And they would then take the goals and objectives and develop annual work plans or action plans around what actions or strategies would be undertaken to actually move forward with achieving the goals and objectives. The other piece we talked about, which is making sure there's a local municipal approach, because there are all of the local municipalities, is again leveraging any local municipal committees to make sure that we're anchoring the community safety and wellbeing plan in your community. So if there's work already being undertaken in Lucan Biddulph, that you would have a committee that could talk about that work, or talk about are there specific or unique things that you should be doing in your municipality that would help to move forward with the implementation of the community safety and wellbeing plan. So it's a bit of a hybrid approach where you see sort of that overall Middlesex committee taking a look at what should be happening sort of across the county with those subcommittees leading the priority areas, but then also an opportunity for local municipal committees to be involved as well and do some of that implementation and talking about what it looks like in each of your local municipalities. So that gives you an overall sense of sort of what's in the plan. I know and hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at the document as well, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about it.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Jennifer. And it has been a full year of consultation on this, so I'm happy to see the final document in front of us. Councillor Regan.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. with respect to the concerns, so there's a lot of generic concerns throughout Middlesex County. And I'm just wondering, you may have mentioned it, but then I didn't see it, but where there's specific concerns with specific municipalities, like Lucan's issues might be different than other issues. I just wasn't sure if that was addressed. And the other, just really quick question, I think last meeting we had a meeting with, or presentation by OPP, and they were talking about having mental health workers with writing. I think that's what they were talking about, writing. And I'm just wondering if that's like what was the involvement of the OPP in the study? But I guess the first one is just making sure that the concerns for Lucan Biddulph, if they've been addressed, if they've been identified, and that the plan is going to be specific to those different areas.
Yeah, so you'll see the 5 priority areas do represent sort of issues and concerns and challenges that came up across all of the municipalities. And the piece that we wanted to make sure we didn't miss as we moved it into implementation was the local municipal committees, so that we could talk about, so let's say, so mental health is one of the areas of focus. The strategies or actions you take in Lucan Biddulph may be different than what it looks like in Glencoe or in North Middlesex. So it gives you that ability to have that, I call it the unique flavor of your municipality in terms of actions that you may take that may be different than other municipalities. So there'll be a subcommittee around mental health that will be countywide, but then the local municipal committee will be giving it that local view, which I think is really important because there are differences when you look across and think it's like you've got some urban areas like a Strathroy, which may be very different than some of the other municipalities as well. So that's to me the opportunity to actually build in the local piece. In terms of OPP, we did have police and OPP representatives on the advisory committee. So they were involved in identifying the priority areas and the goals and objectives in the community safety and wellbeing plan, and really great participation and involvement from them in terms of developing the plan.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
If you go to, Councillor Regan, if you go to page 26 of the document, it's got the full list of the project steering committee members and the advisory committee members. So,
yep, I got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks again.
I think that Jennifer's done a great job of saying about how the local flavor can be brought into it, but the whole point of doing it on a county-wide basis was so that there wasn't 8 projects going on. We're all have to do the same project. Let's do it together. And certainly the data showed that the concerns that have been brought to the table and the goals that we've got in front of us are across the county in all municipalities. But to her point, how we deal with it, that's where we'll get to the nuts and bolts. Any other questions or comments for Jennifer? Deputy Mayor Manders.
So I don't know if Jennifer or Ron or Jeff or whoever maybe wants to comment on this. That's interesting, your slides on transportation and healthy community and community safety and well-being. We're in an interesting situation in Lucan Biddulph that we're about to, we've had about 600 acres submitted to Lucan Biddulph for future residential growth for a 25-year outlook. And those slides are interesting. And we always have plotted on a slide what's best for maybe services and what's easy serviceable land, but it'd be interesting. Are you going to be engaging on lands and that for future residential, 25-year outlook on what would be the best lands for this type of concern?
Like for walkability and active lifestyle. So it's like the health perspective, but also from a transportation.
Yeah, we're in an interesting situation for a 25-year outlook where the best lands potential would be for this, the slides presented. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me, the community safety and wellbeing plan is, to me, it's like an overlay that you can put on decisions that you make as council, right? So if you're thinking about growth and development, how do you then overlay community safety and wellbeing on top of that? So take a look at the priorities in the plan and say, how may they impact decisions that we're making as a council? Should we be thinking about doing things differently? So to me, it sort of adds another layer of information as you think about decisions that you make as a council.
Well, it's like a strategic plan, right? It gives you a strategic focus, but the focus is on community safety and well-being. So, yeah. Any other comments or questions for Jennifer? And Ron will be discussing it later in his staff report too. So if there's any other questions Ron can probably answer them too. Ron, I see your hand up.
I was just, if I may, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to thank Jennifer for her leadership on this initiative. We couldn't have done it without you, Jennifer. Thank you very much for your time and efforts on this one.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, last call for questions or comments. Great. Well, thanks so much, Jennifer. I will echo Ron's comments. It's been great to work with you. I've worked with you now on a number of projects, and certainly this one's an exciting one. I think most municipalities were taken back when they were told they had to go through this process, but I think it's been a meaningful process for the community, especially the engagement of the advisory committee and having their input. And I think in 5 years, I'll be anxious to look back to see what we've done and how the plan has impacted us. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay. Moving on to our council minutes from June the 1st. And if there isn't anything that needs to be amended or updated, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes as circulated. Councillor Westman and Councillor Reagan. And was there anything that needed to be updated? And all opposed to that motion? And that's carried. Business arising from the minutes. It's all ongoing. I think there's a few things that we'll be speaking to later in our council meeting. But I see Jeff's hand up. So was there one item that you wanted to speak specifically to?
Sorry about that. I couldn't get my controls going there. Just one update, and I know the deputy mayor had asked me about the sidewalk information, and it was coming, and my response was late spring. It's going to be a little bit later than that. We're hoping in the summertime. The announcement on the funding came through last week, which was good news. So that's all come through, and technically we have started working towards that sidewalk inspection. So that data should be coming shortly to Lucan Biddulph. So once I get that data, then I can follow up with a report to council. I just wanted to give an update that although it did say late spring, it's looking more like midsummer or late summer now. So
Great. Okay. Thank you for that update, Jeff. And was there anything from the previous minutes that council wanted to add to business arising? Then we'll move on to correspondence. And there are two items that have been highlighted by staff. And the first one is a letter from the CRTC, and it's in response to the motion that we passed at our last meeting with regards to the 3-digit suicide crisis support number. So just wanted to make sure that everybody's seen that and highlighted it. Certainly in talking to Tina and Ron, and you can see in the balance of our correspondence, a number of communities have done the same, and motions still keep coming in to our office in support of this. So that's just for information. The next one comes from Middlesex County, and it's Story Walks Adventures in Outdoor Living. And Paul, I believe you are going to talk about this.
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So as you're all aware, last year we participated in the Middlesex Story Walks. They have been putting in for some funding opportunities to improve upon this, make it a more permanent fixture. Proud to say the front cover of their leaflet there, we feature both Campanelli Pond and Granton Park, as they were well enjoyed in our community. With the recent events, obviously, with the finding of the residential schools and the tragedy in London, Ontario, they're kind of gearing their focus to focus on fostering social connectedness. They're going to be featuring topics of inclusion, diversity, and mental health, as well as well-being. They feel that stories can bring people together and can build empathy, and empathy can foster pro-social behavior. So they're revising this to facilitate a meaningful dialogue and build upon social connectedness to support, but they're still supporting the development of outdoor recreational opportunities. Once again, we've signed a letter of support for this program. I think it's great for our community. It was well enjoyed, and what a good opportunity to have the youth, have a conversation about some of these issues. This summer, they're going to be focusing on diversity, self-care, and Indigenous. So it's a great program. I hope that we can get a more permanent fixture. I hope we're successful in that. I've also reached out to some service clubs in our area to hopefully help with that as well. So just want to make you aware of this, and we're looking forward to having it back in both communities, Lucan and Granton.
So I guess the question is, are they still going to do it as they did last year and then just wait on the funding?
Yeah, for now, they'll do it as they did last year.
Okay.
It's the laminated pictures and the stakes, and they'll be maintaining it. We're happy to assist. I always tell Nadine, call us if you need us to do anything. So that's what they're going for right now, but hopefully a more permanent fixture where it's more protected and can last longer would be great for our community.
Okay, excellent. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
There's still a number left in the balance of communications. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to speak to any. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to speak to number 14, which is a motion from Huron Kinloss Council and in support of the town of Cochrane. And what it's doing is it's asking the federal and provincial government to consider the fire department is eligible for infrastructure grants. I didn't know they weren't, and this was brought to my attention, and I just thought it was something that we could support, and perhaps because as we know, we might be looking at improvements to our fire department. So I'm just wondering if council would be, there would be an appetite to support that. Just asking.
Yep. I'm just looking to council. I wouldn't see why not. Maybe I don't know whether there's a deadline on that. Did you just want to use the same motion, or did you want to wait for staff to bring one back?
I was just wondering if Ron, if I may ask, if Ron, if we should bring this back for July, and if staff would bring back a motion.
Ron, yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Regan's question. Yeah, we as staff can bring forward a motion. I don't think there's any time restrictions on this type of request. It's sort of an overall general request. So we can certainly prepare a properly worded motion to bring forth up to your next meeting.
I think it's very timely, since I think I know that there was a joint submission for all the municipalities from the county to talk about broadening infrastructure dollars to municipalities for different programs. Certainly, I think there's a CAO meeting this week. Certainly that could be added to the list of infrastructure projects that, should we be just successful with an AMO delegation, that could be spoken to as well. Okay, so that can be brought back at the next council meeting. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to speak to?
I'll just say thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the items of correspondence for information. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. On to our committee reports. The first one up is Blue Water. Nothing. CEDC, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The committee met briefly last night to review our first CIP application, grant application. So they reviewed that, and then we just kind of talked about what's happening for the rest of 2021 and some of the projects that we're working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Lake Huron, we did have a meeting. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, so I will wait for the minutes and then report back on that. And then just as an update for the governance discussions, there was supposed to be a meeting in June, and that has been postponed, so we won't be meeting until September. So that will delay the process. Nothing from the fire boards. Anything from ABCA or Upper Thames? Councillor Westman.
We have our ABCA on Wednesday and the Upper Thames is Tuesday, so we'll report first part.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Westman. I think he's got meetings in the future and he will report back at our next meeting because it kind of glitched out there. Parks and Rec, anything, Paul?
Currently no new updates.
Okay, great, thank you. Staff reports, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first one on the list is the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And of course, many thanks to Jennifer Kirkham for her presentation earlier. It sort of outlines, I'm not going to go through the entire report. The the important parts are the deadline of July 1st, 2021. And again, as Jennifer stated, this is why we need to approve the plan today at our meeting today in order to make that deadline. So, and again, this is a standard plan that will be adopted by all the lower tiers across the county. So the one thing I did want to speak to is, and she quickly touched on it there, the financial implications. Just sort of a bit of a heads up. There's been no funding that came down from the province in order to do this. So it was, that was a little disappointing. And we've talked about that on a number of occasions over the past years, that, lower tier municipalities and the counties are it's kind of frustrating when we get told to do something and there's no, so it's additional duties or additional things that the municipalities are required to do with no additional funding in order to do that. So that was an important part of her report. But the recommendation, Madam Mayor, and to the rest of council is that the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan attached as Appendix 1 to the report in your package be adopted, and that a copy of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan be forwarded to the Ministry of the Solicitor General as required by the Police Services Act 1990.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ron? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Is the idea of accepting this plan and recommended by our staff to accept this plan, is it to actually implement it and work within the plan where possible?
Ron.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor's question. As I see this rolling out, Mr. Deputy Mayor, what will happen is right now, each report has a strategic plan section where the report is compared to the strategic plan. How does this align with the strategic plan? So on a go forward basis, starting with the next meeting, all staff reports are going to have to try and insert a section with regard to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So every report should have a section similar to what we do with the strategic plan. So there's, there's different sections in our strategic plan. How does it align with, health and accessibility and things like that? We'll have similar clauses with the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So that's really good. That's better than I thought, because again, I really struggle with government spending money on feel good stuff and not, again, doing, presenting it, filing it, feels good, do nothing. So thank you. Yeah. So exactly, this cannot sit on a shelf because we are going to be required to report, whether that's annually or at the end of the 5-year term, how did we meet our goals and objectives for this plan.
So just a couple things on that as well. And Jennifer touched on it, that, and from what I remember from the last time that the steering committee met, and maybe Ron, you can back me up on this, the idea was that the county the county committee, that the kind of the big broad committee would essentially be the advisory committee that had been brought together because they're the ones from all different sectors. They're the ones that are actually boots to the ground doing this work, whether it's through health initiatives or through housing and homelessness, all of that sort of thing. So my understanding was that that advisory committee would sit as the broad committee and essentially would report back. So let's just take mental health. So CMHA would report back that they're doing ABC, and this is how it's impacting the county and communities. And then that would be a way to tick off those boxes. My further question though is, she spoke a number of times about a local committee, and I guess, is there going to be something that's going to come back from staff, a recommendation as how at the local Lucan Biddulph level, we're going to speak to that, to Councillor Regan's point earlier, how does it personalize it to Lucan Biddulph? So will that be coming in the future?
Madam Mayor, to answer that question,
Yeah.
I don't think that sort of detail has been sort of fleshed out yet. We don't know how that's going to work and what the expectations are of that. Again, to set up a separate committee just for this, I don't know if that's the way that all the lower tiers are going to go or how. So,
but I think the whole point is that it doesn't matter what's happening in other communities. It's what is done in your community to personalize it here. So what we do may be different than what Chum Center is going to do. And I guess, is staff going to bring back that report to say, this is how we're going to approach it? Maybe this work's already being done by groups in Lucan. And if that's the case, then somehow you kind of bring them together to report back. But at some point we have to answer as to what is personalizing this to Lucan.
Madam Mayor, we have a CAO meeting this Thursday, so that I'm going to bring that up as one of the topics as to how does everybody else see that flowing out in their own community. And to your point, we'll see if we can bring back a report as to how that's going to actually work in Lucan Biddulph.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? I might just remind the Deputy Mayor, yes, it's a feel-good story, but it was a feel-good story that was mandated by the province. This wasn't just something that the CAOs got together and said, let's do this. The province did mandate this to our communities, and we have to do it. And to Ron's point, we don't get any money for it. So it's, we're kind of in that vacuum of being told to do something and we have to produce it. So.
Which is good.
If we act on it, right?
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
Even if we weren't mandated to do it, I think those slides were good. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay. Okay. So there is a recommended motion in front of you, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder, please. There's no further discussion. Councillor Regan, a seconder. Deputy Mayor Manders. And all opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report is the report on the process to fill the Ward 2 councillor vacancy. And just to go through a couple parts of the report. Background, on May 29th, the former councillor for Ward 2 tendered his resignation to the mayor effective immediately. And the one part I should have put in there, and Madam Mayor, thank you for bringing that up, is the councillor also submitted it to the clerk, and it had to be submitted to the clerk in order to satisfy the requirements of the Municipal Act. So that's an important part. So because the Municipal Council accepted the tendered resignation at the last meeting, we had to declare the seat vacant, which we did. And we also voted to accept the resignation. So those two were done. Now, under the Municipal Act, there are two methods of replacement available to council. One is the by-election, which I have to say I didn't find any lower tier municipalities of our size that have ever done that. It's quite expensive. It's very cumbersome because it doesn't incorporate the entire municipality. It's a very difficult thing to do. A lot of people to this day, I would suggest, do not know what ward they actually live in. So it does pose a bit of a problem. To get the message out and to get the voter turnout is always a difficult thing. The other option is to fill the vacancy by appointing a person who has consented to accept the office if appointed, and that seems to be the more common method of replacement. So a similar process was undertaken by Middlesex Centre, our municipal neighbors to the south, just recently. I think it was within the last 6 months. So the recommendation, Madam Mayor, without going through everything, and this again, I vetted it through our representative at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, just to make sure I dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's. So the recommendation to council is that, first of all, the report be received for information. Second, that council choose the option to appoint a qualified elector in accordance with section 236(1)A of the Municipal Act 2001, and instruct staff to advertise for applications for qualified individuals to fill the Ward 2 council seat. And further, and that's the other part, further, the council approve the amended statement of policy number 1020-04-2021 titled Appointment of Vacancies on Council. And the need for that arises from the fact that the former policy was quite dated in that it actually spoke that replacement had to come from the existing ward. So at one point in time, you had to run in the ward in which you lived. That was changed a number of years ago. The exact year I can't remember, and nobody at Municipal Affairs could remember exactly what year that changed, but probably more than 15 years ago it changed. So that is no longer sort of valid anymore. So the proposal before council tonight is to basically delete a few words from that section 4 of that policy to read where the runner-up is no longer qualified to hold office or is polled less than the required votes, the council shall appoint a qualified elector to fill the vacancy. That used to say, shall appoint a qualified elector from the same ward to fill the vacancy. So the suggestion, the recommendation is to just delete those few words and replace it with the council shall appoint a qualified elector to fill the vacancy. So Madam Mayor, that's the report and the recommendation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Ron. I'm sure there'll be some discussion, comments from council at this time. Any questions? Councillor Regan.
Ron, I don't know if it's just an obvious thing, but it just, with that recommendation, is that the person still needs to be a resident of Lucan Biddulph, obviously, right?
They have to be a qualified elector, correct?
Right. Okay.
So,
and is there, I'm sorry.
So that doesn't necessarily mean a resident, because I think you can own property, right? You can
Correct.
own property. It's the
Right.
owning of property.
Or even be a spouse of an owner.
Yeah.
All right.
If my
Okay.
spouse owned property in London, I would be considered a qualified elector in the City of London.
Right. Okay.
All right. May I just ask another question?
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron, just wondering about timing. If that's an appropriate question to ask, just sort of when we will be moving forward with this.
Yeah, I sort of wanted to get over the first hump before we get to
Okay.
the second.
All right. Okay. Okay.
My follow-up questions as your staff is number one, timing. How quick does council want to do this, and how much time do they feel is reasonable? And number two, the extent of the advertising. Do we want to send a newsletter out to everybody, because that way we know every household is going to get it? Does council want it advertised in the 2 papers? Social media, I think, is a given, because it really doesn't cost us anything to use that platform. So those are kind of the 2 follow-up questions. But I kind of wanted to.
Sorry, Ron, I got ahead of myself there.
Okay, so let's focus on how we're going to fill the position. Okay, and how do we to the recommendation that's in front of us. Any other comments from council? I guess I would say that we are going to appoint a qualified elector and to advertise applications. And I guess and maybe this is also follow-up, but when you say applications, are you producing an application for them to fill out? Or is it just like a CV that's going to be handed in?
So my suggestion would be that council pass the recommendation first. So
Mhm.
then we're definitely into talking about appointing for the vacancy.
Okay.
And after that, I would then just, suggest that a cover letter and a resume
Okay.
would be appropriate.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know about applications, what that meant. Okay. Last call for comments or questions. Councillor Westman.
Okay, so just wrapping my head around it here, review. So what if we get 6 applicants? And then how do we narrow that field down to 1?
Ron?
If I may, Madam Mayor, the Municipal Act doesn't spell out a specific process that council has to follow. So it is basically at the discretion of council. So what Middlesex Centre did was basically accept all the applications. They reviewed, it's almost like a job application process. Council reviewed the applicants. They chose, I don't know how many they might have got, say they got 10, and they decided they would interview 3. Then they had a meeting and interviewed the actual 3, and then after that they narrowed it down to 1. So I would suggest that would be an appropriate process. But again, it depends on how many applications you get.
And it is an open process.
It is an open process.
And so if anybody after, obviously, if this goes through, I would encourage you to go back and watch the Middlesex Centre council meeting where they did that to get an idea of how that was done. Any follow-up, Alex? Okay. Deputy Mayor Manders.
I think the process, I do have some questions about it, but I think maybe I should wait till after.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I guess my 2 cents is, I think that this is the option to go ahead, is to put a call out to our residents, and hopefully we get some good applications. So I would definitely support this recommended motion. There aren't any other comments or questions on the motion, then I would ask for the motion, and then we can continue the discussion on actually how it's going to play out. So I'd ask for a mover and seconder for the recommended motion in front of you. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay. Ron.
So moving forward, here we are Tuesday night. I would suggest, and I'm kind of getting the feeling from a few members of council that time is quickly passing here. So my first question is, how quickly do you want to appoint a replacement? We do have the clock is ticking. There's a 60-day time limit from June the 1st. So that basically gives us to virtually the end of July in order to replace the current vacant seat. So if I look at the calendar, here we are at June the 15th. If we get something out this week, in my opinion, if we got it out Friday via a newsletter that everybody receives on Friday, if we could get it out Thursday, everybody should get it on Friday. Give them 2 weeks, that'll put it to Friday, July the 2nd. Then council next meets on the 13th. We could have a summary report for council to consider then, and at that meeting on the 15th, you can decide how you want to proceed. I'm thinking that this depending on the number of applications you get, we may be able to start the meeting an hour earlier and do those interviews, if you want to call it that, or quite possibly if there's a number of them that council wants to interview, then quite possibly we could set up a special meeting for that specific purpose and do it by a special meeting. And right now, my opinion, it probably should be a special meeting because it is fairly important, and I don't think you want to be under a time crunch to get through it. So again, that would be before council on the 13th, and we could have a special meeting, sometime before the end of July to make that decision.
Okay.
So that's on the timing, and then on the the method. Yeah, the method. I'm thinking newsletter would hit every mailbox. Social media would catch sort of the balance. Newspaper, I don't know, the circulation anymore of both papers. Certainly newspaper circulation is not what it once was. But again, that's a council decision. If you wish to put an ad in both papers, I can certainly do that. But that is a choice for council to make.
All right, thoughts on, first of all, let's, I guess, talk about the timing, the timeline. How does that suit council? Councillor Westman, I see you nodding your head. You're good with that? Yeah. And I see Dave Manders, Councillor Regan.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm fine with that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think for anybody watching, I just want to reiterate that if there are any issues in Ward 2 that anybody has an issue with, the four of us are only an email or phone call away. So you still are being represented, and that shouldn't be of a concern to anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're okay with that timeline. I do think that makes sense with the holiday in there as well. So I think that's good. And then the advertising. I guess the question out there is newspapers, but I think I saw Dave's hand up. Maybe when Ron was talking about it.
Yeah, it wasn't on the advertising. If you want me to wait.
Okay, sorry. No.
Proceed with my question, or I'll wait.
It doesn't affect the advertising?
No, not what I'm going to ask and discuss.
Okay. All right. So let's get that kind of hammered down, and then I'll open it up to open questions. Councillor Regan.
I think with the advertising for 2 weeks with the social media and the newsletter, I would be happy with that. I think that would cover everyone. And again, that's the quickest way to get it out. We'll have it out by Friday. So to me, that's just, I mean, we're moving it forward. So that's okay. So, and again, everybody gets that newsletter.
Okay. I might suggest, I don't know how Middlesex Center advertised it. And I'm just wondering if we find, at 10 days into it that we're not getting any feedback or anything, we might need to look at becoming a little bit more aggressive. But you didn't talk to Middlesex Center to see what they did you, Ron?
I didn't. I don't recall exactly what they did. I didn't ask that specific question. No, I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
For the cost, it just does not hurt our budget or anything. The way I look at it, staff can correct me if I'm wrong. We're probably looking at $100 each newspaper for advertising. Really, can we go wrong by not doing it in the two local papers? It is a whole ward. I mean, there could be worse money spent. So.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
stuck either way. I mean,
yeah, I don't. I agree with Daniel, but now I'm just kind of thinking, if it hit, what do we? The only thing we have to lose is $200. So.
I think it's more than that. I think advertising is a little bit more than that, but to the point, it's not a tax increase to our citizens, that's for sure. I would agree. I do think that getting it out in the newspaper, I think we've all heard stories about people who haven't seen it in for whatever reason, haven't gotten the newsletter, aren't on social media. At least this just kind of ticks off all the boxes. So I would be in favor of hitting the newspapers as well.
That's the way I look at it too. Just hits, it checks all the boxes.
Yeah. And again, certainly I would encourage anybody that's watching this to, take on advertising themselves and talk to your neighbors and, you know, let them know that this is what we're doing. So word of mouth also helps, right? Okay, opening up to other comments or questions about the situation in front of us. Dave.
Yeah, so I just want to play that. I like the plan. So if the 13th is the deadline for people to put their name in, I'm just playing it out in my head when we submit our name to be elected. As people submit their name to be elected, will that be posted, and is that public, or is it like a sealed tender? If somebody wants to know, can a council member find out, tell other people in the community who's applied, or is this confidential until the 13th?
I wouldn't think it would be.
I wouldn't think it'd be confidential, but I can't state that as a fact. Lisa, do you?
I just want to be
No, not offhand, but I can't imagine it would be confidential. And we could create something on the website like how we had for the election that has names and everything like that. So we can do that as long as we find out that it's acceptable.
I can't imagine it being confidential. As soon as you fill out your nomination form that you're running in an election, I mean, your name's there, so.
Yeah, I think I want consistency and be able to repeat the same thing and have everyone have the same experience. So I just want to clarify, when someone submits their name within 24 hours, it'll be on our website.
I think that's probably how.
Or if somebody wants to know, they need to inquire. Just how, if
I don't know who wants to take that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as long as when we clarify that it's an open process, like that people can see as soon as the application gets in, we'll post it right away on the website as they come in. Mm-hmm.
It's a public process, to Lisa's point. Yeah.
So we can create a tab on the website that says Ward 2. Okay.
Yeah, and I could reach out, Madam Mayor, to Middlesex Center to see how they did it. I'm sure they had a process.
Okay.
Sorry, just one more thing. I think in saying that too, once we figure that out, that should be included so that people are aware that if you are applying, this will be a public process. It will be listed on our website, so they're not surprised all of a sudden when their information is kind of public.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We lost Dave there. Did you have anything else, Dave?
Yeah, sorry, I got very strong internet here. I don't know what's causing it. So I heard nothing. Obviously, I flipped off. So I heard nothing from when I asked just what. So I'm nowhere from my question. So I didn't hear anything. So yeah.
Okay.
My question.
So what we're going to try and do is in the initial mail out notice that will be out Thursday, so people get it Friday, is that people need to know that if they submit their name will appear on a public document on our website or whatever, that they know that their name will be published and it will be a public document. So there's no secrecy. It's not as if, I'll put my name in and see what happens on the 13th or whatever. No, as soon as you put your name in, Lisa's going to put it on the website or whatever within 24 hours. Okay, does that answer your question?
Can you hear us, Dave?
No.
I don't think he can.
No.
Maybe somebody can text him. Maybe he needs to jump off and jump back in. Okay. Were there any other questions? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering for consistency. Oh, can I go ahead there? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm just wondering for consistency's sake, when we have people that are applying, and I'm just asking, is there a criteria, Ron, that we we have people who are saying, what is it that you want to know? Would we be, so when we advertise it, do we say, these are the things we need, A, B, and C? I'm just wondering about criteria with respect to, like I said, what people need to turn in. Do they need to post education, experience? Is there like a reflection? I don't know, just so that those kinds of things, because people may ask about that. And I'm just thinking for people who are interested may not really know what it is we want, and we could be missing out on a couple of very good candidates. So I'm just, again, I know what I would look for, but I'm just wondering if we need to standardize that at all, just for the fairness of process is what I'm looking for.
I think we're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. So we'll beg, borrow, and steal from other municipalities that have done this.
Okay.
Most recently, Middlesex Center, and go from there.
Right.
It's very important, like you said, to have that information up front so that everybody knows what they're expected to submit. I guess.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think, keeping it simple, basically a resume of who they are, what they do, that sort of thing. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Dave, we're going to try you again.
To try. If not, I'll give up. But on this app, I'm reflecting back to us. We basically got a little piece of paper, we scribble our name down, and we submit it. I think asking anyone else to do much more beyond that, I don't think, I'm not in agreement of. Just that part doesn't sound like it will be a vote, but I don't see them doing anything different than we do. I don't think they should have to. That's
a good point.
I just, again, trying to go through the process so people and myself understand. So after the 13th, you know what? Regardless of the amount of names, if it is going to be whittled down to 2 or 3, is that only council and staff? How is the process happen from after that?
Well, I think all of the names come to council. If there's 10 applicants, they'll all come to council. All those names, like staff can't decide, like all of them have to come to council.
Right. And then council in public forum talks about the 10. That's what I'm trying to play out, Madam Mayor. So then council talks about all 10 applicants openly in a public meeting. And then there were 12 people or 3 people. And then that's what I'm trying to play out here. And then as we talk, we all talk openly, or how does that work?
If I may, Madam Mayor, it's kind of awkward. It's kind of weird, I guess, if you think about it. But it is a public process, so there's no opportunity or no allowance in the law for you to go in camera to discuss this kind of thing. It's got to be done in an open session. So at that meeting on the 13th, you'll get however many names of people that submitted for that position, whether it's 5 or whether it's 10 or whatever. Council will have an opportunity to, maybe you're going to decide to interview all of them. I don't know. That's your call. That's absolutely not staff's call. We just gather the applicants and present them to council.
Quick question in that. That interview process, is that a public?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
it'll be just like a meeting like we are right now, live to YouTube. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's what I'm wondering. Okay.
So I think you bring up a good point, Deputy Mayor, about, when anybody goes through a formal election process, all they have to do is just fill out their form, and that's it. And keeping it the same. I guess my concern is that initial meeting July 13th. If we're so fortunate to have 10 applications and all they are names, and we're looking at that meeting to either, we're going to interview them all, or we're going to whittle it down. We might need to know, because I mean, there's all sorts of people in the community that I don't know. So maybe just a one-pager should be submitted with it.
Yeah, to your point, Madam Mayor, if I can add, I think we leave it totally up to the applicant. It's however much or little that they want to say. It's really up to them, right? It's like an election campaign. If you want to do signs, you can do signs. If you don't want to go door to door, you don't go door to door. It's as much or as little as you want to do. So.
Okay, I see. Yep, makes sense.
All right, any other questions? Okay, all right, so I think we've figured out how we're going to move forward with this process. Okay, Jeff actually has to step out of the meeting, so if you don't mind, I'm going to jump ahead to his report, and then we'll jump back to Ron's report. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate we're jumping a little bit out of sequence here. I had two reports. They're basically very similar. The first one is the north portion. It's a tender report on the north portion of the Blake drain. It has come back in. It is under our budget estimate, and our recommendation is to take low tender. Again, very similar on the second report, is on the south portion of the Blake drain, and it did come in under budget, and we are recommending that we take low tender. Both low tenders were on one company, which was nice to see, because they can do both projects while they're there. So it's fairly straightforward, unless someone has a question on those two. Basically, what we're looking for is to secure the low bid, and then when by the third reading of the bylaw, when that takes place, then the authorization of awarding it goes forward. So I'll bring that forward now. Oh.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. Any questions on that? Okay, so the first recommended motion has to do with the north portion of the train, or the north portion of the drain. Excuse me, if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? That's carried. And then the motion for the south portion of the drain. Councillor Regan and a seconder. Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Jeff, did you have anything else you wanted to update us on before you had to jump off?
No, I don't really have any update, but I'm trying to talk very slow. I will take, if there is a question by council, or if anybody out there would like to ask me a question. There is a large emergency taking place in Coldstream. So. Oh,
okay. Okay.
So they need manpower. So I'm going to jump off and head to that. But at
Okay.
the same time, my priority is here.
Yep.
And if anybody had any questions, I certainly would like to answer. So.
Okay, good. All right. So just so everybody knows, Jeff's a volunteer fire department in another fireman in another municipality. So that's why he's being called to Coldstream. And okay, were there any questions that council had for Jeff that were going to be brought up during councilor comments or anything? Okay, I don't see any, so you're off the hook. You can go on, and certainly we wish our friends and neighbors in Coldstream all the best with whatever it is they're dealing with.
Yeah, I will, and I will make sure I watch this so that if there is comments out there, I can catch up with everybody. Okay. Through the recording. So
okay, great.
Thank you very much, and I apologize.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, going back to Ron's report, we've still got, I think Tina was going to do the code of conduct, but Ron, did you have anything else that you wanted to speak to before I go over to Tina?
No, Madam Mayor, that's all I had. Thank you.
Great. Tina.
Good evening, and through you, Madam Mayor, I just have the one report in front of you regarding the Council Code of Conduct. I'm just going to briefly review some of the revisions that were made. The code was amended as per advice of our Integrity Commissioner, Greg Stewart, and through further review and comparison with the county code and other lower tiers, a few other amendments were made. One of them being just to provide clarity and ease of reference with the document. There was a table of contents added, and the code itself is broken into sections and parts just to provide ease of reference. The forms that are included with the code of conduct are attached as Appendix A, B, C, and D, and they're referred to throughout the code and referenced at the end of the document. The code is, more importantly now, references and is applicable to all local boards and committees, and that was something that was brought up with Greg Stewart. And Part 4 of the code was amended. That was regarding the conflict of interest section, and it was revised to comply with Section 5.1 and 5.2 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Mr. Stewart also provided further input to this section in particular, and that was revised based on his suggestions. Part 6 is just regarding the gifts and participations at events. We did have that section included in our previous code, but it was just expanded to provide some further clarity. And based on the county's code and the other lower tiers, they did have a statement of disclosure form included. So we have now attached that to our code as well, just to coincide with what others are doing. And it's attached as Appendix A. And in there, it does say that if council was to receive a gift in excess of $200, they would need to complete that form. So if you have any questions about that process, it's laid out in there a little bit more than it was previously set out. Part 17 is the revised procedure regarding the complaint process. It involves the informal, the formal, the informal and formal process, and the form is attached as Appendix B to the code of conduct at the end. A new section that was added in form is the request for advice. So there is an actual form attached that you would fill out and submit to our integrity commissioner if you were looking to get advice on a particular section. Other than that, the rest was part of our original document. And yeah, I think that's everything. If anybody had any questions.
Great, thanks, Tina. I want to thank you for the work that you've done on it. It looks good. I like the table of contents. I think it's very user-friendly, easy to access. So I know that it's taken up a bit of time the last few weeks, but thanks so much for doing that, because I do think it's a great improvement. Any other questions or comments for Tina on this? Okay, there's a recommended motion in front of you that we approve the revised council code of conduct as presented and pass the implementing bylaw to adopt the same. Councillor Westman, the seconder, Councillor Regan, all opposed, and that's carried. Do you have anything else, Tina?
No, but I guess I will. I did talk to a couple of councillors today, but today is our first meeting using the eScribe program. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of hiccups to work through, but hopefully everyone was able to access it okay. County IT did push through the app to everyone's iPads. I didn't have a chance to speak to you today, Dave, but if there are any questions regarding that, please reach out and we'll try and assist and work through any of the new format of that program. And Kathy's had a little bit more experience with it through 20, but everyone's going through the same process. So hopefully we'll learn together.
Yeah, we'll get through it. It is a learning experience, something new, but we'll get through it. No problem. Okay, thanks, Tina. Did anybody have any questions for Tina? Okay, nothing from building and bylaws. So Catherine, the first one has to do with the Nagel Drive water main, but I believe Ron is taking that. So we'll do that one first. Then I know you've got some verbal ones to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the reason I'm giving this report and Catherine is not is because Catherine is a resident of Nagel Drive, so she has a conflict of interest. So on behalf of Tracy Loyens, who actually did this report, so I'm not stealing her thunder. But the recommendation is that council receive this report and instruct staff to internally borrow the outstanding $192,150.42 from the water reserve account, with payments to replenish the borrowed funds coming from the remaining 6 Nagel Drive residences as outlined in this report. So again, this has been a long-term project. It's been up and down and through the ringer. We've applied for funding. We've been turned down for funding, and finally it was decided that we would go forward. Council agreed to basically drive this project forward to service those 12 houses. Again, those 12 houses were serviced by 2 communal wells. It just was not, they were not able to sustain that any longer. So the decision was made to extend the water main out there. The cost to each individual homeowner ended up final cost of $32,025.07, certainly not inconsequential. And so once that cost was arrived at, 6 of the 12 were able to pay up front. The balance of the residents would like to borrow that amount of money. The amount, like I said, in the recommendation is $192,000. That amount is not substantial enough to go through the Infrastructure Ontario process. The Infrastructure Ontario process is administratively heavy. The process is the same whether you borrow $5 million or whether you borrow $200,000. And because the amount is so small, it's just not, in staff's opinion, it's not worth the administrative effort to go through. So the recommendation is before council that we internally borrow. We can take the money from the water account. So again, it's not going to impact the general taxpayer. It will stay within the water account. And the money is at a rate of 2.78%. So if the money is sitting in the bank account, certainly it's not earning 2.78%. So there is a bit of an internal benefit by borrowing from our own account. And that will be paid back over the next number of years, and it gets paid back through the person's tax bill. So it'll be spread over 4 installments on their tax bill. So the attachments, the debenture amortization debenture schedule was attached, and the Infrastructure Ontario published borrowing rates as of April 19th, 2021, if anybody had any questions as to where we came up with that interest rate. Happy to answer any questions, any specific questions anybody has.
Questions on this? Okay, seeing none, then the recommended motion is in front of you to internally borrow the outstanding amount, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. Before I ask the question, just wondering, Deputy Mayor, did you have a question? I think you froze there for a bit.
No question, and yes,
Okay.
I did.
Okay, thanks. All right, so it's been moved by Councillor Westman and seconded by Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, Catherine, I know you've got some verbal reports for us, updates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just the one thing I wanted to mention is that we prepared a budget survey to engage the public in our upcoming budget process. And just to watch for that, we hope to have that out before the end of the month, and it will run for about 3 weeks. It'll be in electronic format, but we also hope to have it available in a paper format by request, and also have a few copies at the office if anyone needs that, doesn't have access to computer, so do it electronically. And then we'll tabulate the results and use that information to guide our budget process for 2022 internally with staff, and then, but it'll be a full presentation to council during probably when we get closer to later in the year, when we do our budget presentations with all the results and any comments we get, because there'll be questions in there, open comments at the end if anyone has anything else to add. So this is our first try at this, and hopefully we get a good response. I just wanted to make everybody aware, that's council aware, and as well as anyone watching, to look out for that.
That's
That's it.
great. No, that's great, Catherine. It's something that we've talked about a lot, about engaging the community. So thanks for doing that. I think that's a great move and a step forward. So thanks very much. Be anxious to see that roll out. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, thanks. Catherine, nothing from planning. We've done public works. So Paul, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. My first report is on the ball diamond light replacements. Just as a first summary for council, this report was created to make council aware of a proposed estimated change in budget to the ball variance to the budget, sorry, of the ball diamond lighting replacement. The LAS facility lighting service provider did a full simulated lighting survey to see our proper needs. We are very underlit at the Lucan Community Center here for ball diamonds, so that it increases our liability, reduces playability, obviously, and so it's something that needs to be addressed in this replacement. So with that, they've brought us a more realistic budget value of $218,000. This number obviously it's just an estimate, but they wanted, you know, a realistic approach to be applied to this. Part of this budget, though, they are aware of what we've set as a goal capital budget. It can be reduced once the final actual proper full lighting survey is completed. And also there's the opportunity to use a local labor. This price was provided using out of town labor as it's a very specialized service, but staff, we do believe there is local labor that could be possible for this type of job, and that could bring the cost down as you don't have travel time and so forth. It's as I said, the bringing things up to the LED lighting standards and safety is key. It's great for community events too. We'll have more lighting out the field once we get back to that. And, you know, this just to make council aware of this variance.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. Any questions for Paul on that? I guess I have a question. And that is, I mean, that is a significant difference, $68,000, understanding that it's just an estimate at this time. But I guess my question would be, what we budgeted 150,000. So what was the background to give you the idea that that's what the project would cost?
So the original pricing for the cost was put through the asset management plan, which it just replaced unit for unit. So it basically replaced metal halide for metal halide. We've been advised no one's going to do that anymore. You wouldn't get metal halide put up again. It's all switching to LED. So that was our original cost estimate for that. It was based upon inflation and what it costs to put those up.
Okay. Okay. And it's too late now, but is there any funding available to help with this? FCM green funding, green energy funding? Like, I guess it's not really green energy though, but it's more efficient.
It is more efficient. So like one thing that they thought, you know, it's great for, this is a part of our community that everyone comes to from out of our community. So it shows our commitment to green energy, which is great. But unfortunately right now they've released their new programs in January of 2021, and there is none for this type of lighting service. And that's originally why, you know, I started the conversation with LAS. They have said, however, if things do get released while the project's ongoing, they would retroactively apply to it on our behalf, because that's part of their service. They apply to any sort of grant opportunity they can, because the whole point of LAS is to make things more efficient and more affordable for municipalities.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Paul on this? Okay, you do have then the recommended motion that we approve the difference from the budgeted amount for baseball diamond light replacements, and that it be funded through the arena reserve. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all opposed? And that's carried. Do you have anything else, Paul?
Yes, Madam Mayor, through you, just quick update for council. Lifeguards, we still haven't been very successful. We've increased the budget. We've increased the wage. We've promoted the job postings. We've been paying to promote the job postings on all sorts of different platforms. We've put tear out leaflets in the post office. We've put them around and we've been sharing on buy and sell groups, and we just are not having applications for qualified lifeguards. We've reached out to former lifeguards now who are going to put in Western University forums to see if there's any people there looking for summer employment. I did have a conversation today with someone that didn't even know about our plight and was they're actually going for their qualifications today, so maybe they will apply. So we're putting out there to the community. If you know anyone, please reach out. This without lifeguards, we will not be able to have a pool. We don't want that to happen. I'm still going to keep the job postings out there, keep promoting them, because ideally, even if we have a shortened season, it's better than no season.
I think maybe the messaging has to be that now it has to turn to, if we don't get lifeguards, there's no pool season. And maybe people don't realize that, even though they say like you want a bank of or a group of lifeguards, maybe they think that we just don't have enough. But I think the message has to get out that we don't have lifeguards, we don't have a season. Deputy Mayor Manders.
I just want to confirm, how many lifeguards is calling sick and things happen like that? How many lifeguards do you need to open? And then how many lifeguards do you have? Is it zero?
So to safely operate our class of pool, we need to have at least 3 on deck. And then usually you have to have 1 in the guardhouse for breaks and sun breaks and that. So reduced hours, reduced capacity. We could run with 2 Bronze Cross and 3 NLS lifeguards. We've had several Bronze Cross applications, but unfortunately you're not allowed to operate with more Bronze Cross than NLS. So we need to have at least 3 NLS lifeguards to open our pool.
And currently you have how many?
We had 1, and they've since notified us that they're seeking opportunities elsewhere because they're unsure of what's going to happen this season.
So you got 0. So actually we need more than the wording. We need more than a lifeguard.
Yes, we need many lifeguards. Well, 3 at most, but.
And you would open the pool with only 3 lifeguards. You would. I know that's what's needed, but to run that as, if you run that as a business, you would open the pool with just 3 lifeguards, knowing that if one called in sick or couldn't, you could still operate with 2.
We could operate with 2, but they wouldn't be able to have that the break, unfortunately. But we might have to do reduced hours if we wanted to do that. And I think it really comes down to, is this, an amenity that the town really needs right now and would really make everyone happy right now. You're stuck at home, you have nowhere to cool down. If this is something they really need, I think we would have to operate on reduced hours for sure if we only had that many guards.
No, I just wish it was a case that we only needed a lifeguard. Okay, well, thank you.
And how many have you hired the Bronze Cross ones yet?
We've had interviews with some
Okay.
before we reposted the job, and it was a tentative until we find out more, because we don't.
Okay.
And we're keeping them posted on our situation.
Okay, if anybody knows any lifeguards, come to Lucan.
Yes.
Good place to work. Anything else, Paul?
Other than that, I think we're just gearing up to get the kids back out on the sports fields. There's been some amendments to the OREGs. I forward this to council just so you guys could all see. It's a lengthy read, as you could all see. There's many fine details in there, but we're trying our best to find the ways that we can operate and offer recreation in our community using that. Other than that, we just had a little excitement with turtles over the last week at the Campanelli Pond. There's quite a few snappers around there, and quite a pile of painted turtles. So ABCA has provided us some information with creating nest protectors, as it's nesting season right now, and there's been some snapping turtles trying to nest right by the path. So if you see them out there, don't disturb them. They can get scared and become egg bound. So
Excellent. All right, thanks, Paul. Any questions for Paul at this time? Okay, thanks, Paul. Economic development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple quick updates. You may notice starting tomorrow, there'll be a new mural being painted on the side of Typad. So he's hoping, it's the same artist, but he's hoping to start that tomorrow. So if anyone asks you, that's what's going on. The only other kind of interesting thing that I want to mention is that recently the Ontario Chamber of Commerce has received the ability to offer rapid tests to small businesses. Obviously, Lucan Biddulph, we don't have a chamber or a BIA, so we're partnering with Strathroy and their chamber, and we're working on a project where we will be a site where small businesses can pick up these rapid tests to test their employees. So it's a free testing, so it's kind of a great project that's coming out. So yep, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, councillor comments. Councillor Westman.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to echo what you said at the beginning of the meeting about the family in London. They have a local connection to us. Solomon Afsel was a physiotherapist at Craigwell Gardens Nursing Home and cared for many of the residents there as a physiotherapist, including my wife. And I got to know the man quite well, and he was a wonderful, sweet, and gentle person, very patient with the residents, and a genuinely decent man. I had the good fortune of meeting his daughter as well on an occasion when he brought her to work with him, and a bright young lady, a very sweet young girl. So it hits the community in all kinds of places because he worked all over the area. I got to know a lot of people and a lot of families and residents at these nursing homes and staff. I know that it has rocked the long-term facilities that he worked at because everywhere he went, he left a lasting impression. He was a wonderful guy. So, and to echo what I said at the last meeting, I mean, Lucan Biddulph, we can be very proud that we are a welcoming and diverse community, and that's a big part of who we are. It's our identity, and I think our community is very representative of our nation. So I just wanted to put that little 2 cents in. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Alex. Councillor Westman. I mean, Councillor Regan, sorry.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Councillor Westman, for making that connection for all of us. That was well said. Thank you. Madam Mayor, if I may, I had a pretty busy 2 weeks. I had 2 sessions I went to. I just wanted to start off with a bit of a concern I had and then just finish off with a bit of an advertisement, if I may. So I just might be a couple of minutes. I just want to start out with just a bit of a concern and maybe a bit of a message. As I was washing my truck the other day, I was approached by 2 residents, and they came up to me and they said, "Regan, what's this about our township being in debt?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, it's all over Facebook." And I said, "Well, I don't really listen to Facebook or read it." I said, "I'd rather have you talk to my face." And I said, I'm not sure. And she says, "Well, it just says that we had some problems." And I said, "Just hang on a sec." So I went in the house and I got this. And this is the consolidated financial statement that we just, we sat through this presentation last one. And as I went through this, and I said, "Well, I think what you need to do is," I said, "I got you look through this." And I said, "If you even go to page 12, so just hang on, I'm going somewhere with this." I said, "There's actually a section in here that talks about the money that this council and previous councils has put away in reserves." So I said, "There's no indication in any of this that we're in any kind of trouble." My point being is that I think that when, and then people have the right to opinion and they have the right to comment. But I think what I want to tell residents is that if they have questions and concerns like that, and this just bothered me, that they need to talk to a counselor, talk to staff who are very competent and know what they're doing. And I guess I'm just to sort of end it. I've been a teacher for 40 years, and I tell my students, it's okay to have a comment, it's okay to have an opinion, but you know what's better is having an informed comment or making an informed opinion. And that's what I want to just sort of stress with residents is to reach out to staff, reach out to counselors if they're not sure about those things. And I wasn't ambushed or anything. It just kind of bothered me that there's this information there and people had the wrong idea. And I don't want people having the wrong idea. So that was sort of the first one. I had the honor actually of representing our township. And there was a session, the Western Ontario Code of Conduct session. And Minister Jill Dunlop was the sort of kicked us off. It was an interesting session because what it talked about was there was a series of questions that there were many, I think from Kitchener West, I think. And a lot of these questions had to do with the punitive aspect of just sort of what happens with counselors, people on council who perhaps cross that line. And they were asking us questions about should there be more punitive financial sanctions? Should they be suspended from council? So there's a whole series of questions. One of the things that came out, there were some stories, of course, that people were making some stories. And one of them that I thought was very interesting was how sometimes the spouse of a council person will tend to take over a meeting or involve themselves in a meeting when they're on Zoom. And I just was shaking my head at some of these. But there were some changes that they were talking about, things like about being a provincial standard, about taking it out of the hands and having the province sort of setting one set of rules for everyone, because there is a lot of diversity with respect to that. So there was, and there's much more, but I'll move along. There was a survey, and I got permission from the mayor to pass that on to council members. I also passed it on to Ron. I believe there was some latitude there for maybe staff to look, but that's your decision to sort of make. So again, I appreciated the opportunity to go to that. It was a very high level discussion. And there will be, I don't know if there's any decisions that are going to be made. The one thing that they did, actually, I did want to mention about having a uniform commission is that most people wanted to take the decision about any kind of sanctions. They wanted to take that out of the hands of council, and they wanted to put that with just one body. So that, again, this is a bit of a report. The second session I was at, again, was June 10th, and that was human rights and equity training. And it was, again, attended by many, many people. And one of the things that they talked about, there's many things, but one of the things that they did talk about was our councils making decisions. And they used the term, they said, is equity in decisions your compass? And not just ethnic equity, but just equity with respect to just, it could be age, it could be anything. So there was a discussion about that as well. There is one thing, though, that they did come up with that I never knew. And I think that I just wanted to mention it quickly, is if somebody has said something or done something to somebody in the workplace, they talk about intent versus impact. And it used to be that if somebody did or said something and totally did not intend to upset anybody or to offend anybody, truly in their heart did not mean to do that, they don't look at intent anymore. But somebody will say, I didn't mean to say that. It's not looking at intent. I thought that was very interesting. That sparked it's the impact rather than the intent. And that sparked a really interesting conversation, because I believe there was a gentleman from Kitchener who had talked and said, well, in criminal law, you have to have intent. And it was, again, that discussion went on for a little while. So that's something that I didn't know that had changed in that. So again, those two sessions, thank you very much for allowing me to go. I appreciate going. The last thing, very quickly, is that I got to attend the Lucan Farmers Market on Sunday. This is not an advertisement for me, but I was really happy when I went there. So I figured it started at 9. I figured I'd show up at about 8:30 to set up. And it was packed. There was, I think, 16 or 17 vendors. All kinds of things were there. They're still looking for people for produce. That was one of the things that they had talked about when I talked to Matt at MJ's. They talked about that's what they sort of looked at. So I was just encouraging people or asking people if they, on Sunday morning, 9 to 1, if they want to get involved or if they want to just sort of drop by and just see what people have to offer and, shop local. That's it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Regan. I know I was registered for the same code of conduct consultation that you were. Mine was postponed, so I'm doing mine on Thursday, which I'm very much looking forward to. And who knows, might have to change it again, the code of conduct, if AMO depends on what their paper comes out with after all this consultation. With the farmers market, maybe anybody that's watching, you said they're looking for people for produce. Do they have to be registered through the Farmers Market Association of Ontario, or can they just be anybody?
Well, all I can speak to is that when I wanted to do that, I just had to, but this is the first time ever for me. I had to like join a Facebook group, and that was it. And then I showed up. So I don't think they have to be involved with anything else. That wasn't mentioned, just they needed somebody for produce. So I don't know. Okay. I can check for you.
No, I know that many farmers markets have, there has to be a connection back to Farmers Market of Ontario thing, but maybe not for them. I just, in case anybody was interested. Okay. Okay, any other councillor comments? Deputy Mayor Manders.
No, I didn't. No, I'm keeping the video off. It's helping my internet. So just so you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, just a reminder that the LPAT hearing that we're involved in is next week, Thursday and Friday. And I guess I would look to either Tina or Ron. Will credentials be sent out to all of council, or do we have to register if we want to watch it, or how does that go?
I'll follow up with the LPAT person tomorrow and send out an email to council to make sure everyone's aware.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tina. All right, one last call for councillor comments. Councillor Westman.
Sorry, I forgot to mention in my section there, the Granton Fire Department pork chop barbecue sold out. So yeah, they had a tremendous success with ticket sales, and this is this Saturday. So anyone who's got a ticket, they're in for a treat for sure.
Yes, that was good news to see on their billboard, so, or on their sign, I should say. Okay, any notices of motion? Then we'll move into motions and accounts. So the first one we've got in front of us are the accounts paid. So resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. May 2021, $966,486. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Motions that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph authorize Catherine Langendijk to attend the MFOA virtual conference from September 21st to 24th at a registration cost of $400 plus HST per person. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? That's carried. Into bylaws, that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third meeting. Just a sec. Okay, sorry. I thought maybe we were missing a bylaw, but we're not. Okay, sorry. That if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 44-2021, the Council Code of Conduct, and 45-2021, the confirming bylaw. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all opposed? And that's carried, and resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:24 p.m. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders, All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Just a reminder, we will not be meeting now until July 13th. So we've got a few weeks in between.